going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to show you full PBR workflow for Redshift. As you know, Cinema 4D bought Redshift, and I'm sure a lot of people wanted to try it. So in this video I just want to show you like a basic intro of how to work with nodes, because as you can see, all of the Redshift material editing or material creation is node based. So I'm just going to show you, for example, if you wanted to download a texture from Texture Haven. A lot of good resources here for textures. They all come with all these different maps that you can use for your materials. Same thing with Polygon. As you can see, we have a lot of free materials from them, and you can use their materials and their maps. Each material comes with all kinds of different maps. You can use these maps in your PBR workflow inside Redshift or Arnold or any other similar engines. Anyway, let's jump back in, and I have some keybinds set up for my workflow. So as you can see, if I click F1, it opens up my shader graph, and if you do double click and edit shader graph, it's the same thing, but I just keybind it to F1 so I can go to my shader graph right away. Some other things that I have set up is Shift 1, which outputs any texture that I highlight to output, which is really nice. So for example, I wanted to edit the scale. I can just type in 10, 10, 10. Oops. And I can see what my noise looks like. And same thing for the viewport. I can do Shift 2, and I can see what it looks like in the viewport. And then if I want to see my material again, I do Shift 1, and it's all good. So if you want to set up those two or those three keybinds, all you have to do is right click here and go to customize commands and just find connect. There you go, connect node to output, connect node to viewport, and same thing for shader graph. Yeah, shader graph editor. I just do F1 and you have those three keybinds. Anyway, so let's begin. As you can see, we have all these different channels. So we have diffuse, reflection, refraction, and so on. And the way you work in Redshift is really easy. Just first find your texture node, and now just bring it in here. And over here it's going to ask you for the path of your texture. So you can just open that up. I already had it open. And in this case, it came with 7 textures. So let's start with diffuse. Open that up. And now all we have to do is drag and drop into this blue section here. Choose diffuse and then choose diffuse color. And as you can see, we get an instant feedback what that looks like. And this is just a quick scene that I set up. And actually, I didn't want to be on this floor. I wanted to be on here. And as you can see, the material is breaking right away, but that's because I don't have any UV set up. So the way to fix that, I'm just going to change it to cubic mapping. And this is what it looks like. And maybe let's try to make it a little bit bigger. Maybe something like this. And that should work. And for the floor material, I just create another material here. Redshift material. Drop that on top. I'm going to click F1 and just drop the roughness to 0.5. So it's not as rough or shiny. And let's just apply this material. Oh, I already did. Sorry. Anyway, let's jump in to this material again, F1. And if you want to rename and stay organized, just click on your node, go to basic, and you can type in diffuse. And there you go. So now you have, oops, it's really hard to grab these nodes. I'm sure there's some kind of update will be coming to make the lives for everybody easier. Anyway, so we have diffuse plugged in. Now let's just duplicate this texture here. So I'm holding Control, duplicate, and let's just plug in another texture in here. So let's do roughness. Open that up, and same thing. Drop it on top of the blue. Drag and drop. Go to reflection, roughness, and now we have 2 different textures in there. And let's just rename this rough. And let's just keep going. So the next thing is probably bump map. Bump map works in Redshift pretty good. Let me just plug that in there. Same thing, open that up, find your bump map here, And now just find your bump map node, bump map, and let's drag and drop into texture input. The bump map goes in overall bump. And as you can see, we're getting our bump right away. And maybe a little too intense, so I'm going to drop it to 0.2. And now it's a little bit better. Let's see what else we have in there. So let's just move these two down. Just zoom out a little bit. Let's just duplicate the roughness. And let's see what else we have in there. So we have our ambient occlusion. Let's open that up. And what you can do with your ambient occlusion is just multiply it on top of the diffuse map. And let me just rename this AO. And now to multiply these two, all you have to do is type in comp or your color compositor. Drop it in there. It's kind of like your Photoshop layers. And you can plug in your ambient occlusion to base color and your diffuse to blend color, and just multiply these two where it says composite mode, multiply, and just plug that in into diffuse. As you can see, everything got darker. So at this point we have our 4 textures in there. Let's see what other textures we have before I'll give it a quick render and see what that looks like. General. So we also have our spec. The Redshift doesn't support spec, it only has roughness. But what we can do is take your spec, for example, and let me just rename this basic spec. And now we can just mix these two. So if you do mix, you would do color mix, or maybe even vector mix if you wanted to. Let's just try maybe one of these. Oh no, this one's not gonna work. Let me try this one. Yeah, this can probably work. You can also use the color mix as well, which gives you pretty much the same result. So I guess let's just do that. Let's plug in our spec. Let's plug in our roughness in here and plug that in inside the reflection channel here. So now we can just play around, and as you can see, it goes from this to this in a little preview. So maybe let's just do it in the middle, and everybody should be happy with that one. And also you have a mix amount, so you can plug in, for example, a noise to mix these two textures. So actually let's just do that real quick. Let's drag in noise, move these two down a little bit, and plug in inside the mix amount. And for the noise, let's just see what that looks like. So I'm going to press Shift 1 to output it to the in here, or the surface it's called, and just increase the scale a little bit. So 10, 10, 10. So now it looks like something like this. And for the color, let's try to increase the contrast, overall contrast, so we can actually mix these two quite well. Maybe something like this. And now we can just take the node or our material and do Shift 1, and it's back to the look dev. Let's see what else we have in there. So let's just organize these a little bit. Let's copy paste, or holding control copy this node here, and go to general, see what else we have. So we use the bump, diffuse, AO, displacement, and normal. So if you want to use the normal bump instead of the normal 2D bump, it's the same workflow. So if you open up your normal, go to basic, do normal bump, and actually in most cases it works better than normal bump. So maybe let's do that. Delete the bump map here, plug that in, and inside the bump map, all you have to do is change it from height field to tangent space normal, and now it should be working. And maybe let's try to increase it just to make sure everything works, and it does. So let's bring it back to maybe 0.5, and that should be good. And for displacement, this model that I have set up here is not really made for displacement. It's really going to break it. But the way you set that up, I can show you real quick. First, let's bring in displacement map or displacement texture, something like this. So we have displacement. And now let's duplicate, for example, this normal bump map. I rename this displacement. Go to the general. Let me just make this bigger. They should really update the shader graph. It's kind of outdated. I don't know. It looks kind of bad. Anyway, um, let's click on here and change it from normal to displacement. And displacement goes in here just like this. Texture map. And then after that, it goes all the way to output displacement. And now you're not going to see any changes in here, but you will see changes in the IPR. So let me just run that. I'm going to unplug displacement for a second because it's going to break my mesh. So let's run this. As you can see, guys, let me just jump inside the camera. So this is the full material that we just built. I just have the HDRI set up so we can see what's going on. And so we have really nice roughness going. We have maybe normal map is a little too intense. We can lower that. And let me just go in here and bring this back. So for the bump, maybe it's a little bit too much. Let's do 0.2. And as you can see, it was okay. Maybe let's do 0.3. Yeah, that's pretty good. And for displacement, just to prove that it works, what you have to do for displacement is also use a tag for Redshift. So if you go to tags, make sure you hover over your mesh selected, go to tags, Redshift tags, and then Redshift object. You have to activate the what's it called, tessellation, and also activate displacement. And now, as you can see, if I plug in my displacement, it's really going to break the mesh because it's not set up for tessellation. But as you can see, it's trying to displace, but it's actually breaking the displacement, and it's not really working. And the reason for that is just my mesh that I have is not set up for that. But that's how you use displacements. For example, if you find a nice texture and you actually have a working mesh, this is how you use it. You plug it in inside the output channel. So let me just delete that and delete the tessellation. So we're back to something like this, really nice material. And then if I try to spin my world, we get really nice reflections on that concrete or stone texture, as you can see. And if you want to play around with different nodes, for example, the diffuse or the roughness, just find, for example, color correct node, and run the diffuse through color correct node like this, and plug it back into blend color. Nothing will change, but from here what you can do is play around for example, the hue and contrast and gamma and a bunch of other things. But hopefully you get the idea. Color correct node is really nice. It's kind of like a Photoshop filter. Let me just plug that back in and delete the color correct. And same thing for the spec and the roughness. What you can do is, let me just take these three, and I'm going to run them through a ramp texture. And this way I can control how my reflections look. So at this point nothing will happen. All you have to do is change the source to Alt. And now if I play around, as you can see, with the white and black values, I can really change my roughness, going from reflective to non-reflective. And yeah, that's basically it, guys, to how to work with basic PBR maps that you download online. Hopefully this video helped you in any way. Please subscribe, leave a like on this video, and if you want to see anything else in terms of Redshift, just leave it in the comments, and I'll try to make a video about it. Anyway, guys, thank you, and as always, have a nice day.